Hit me.
Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast.
The podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
Before we jump into this episode, I do want to warn some of you that there is some adult language in this podcast, words such as and are used, so fair warning. Hello, friends. Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. I appreciate your time today, and I am very excited for you to meet today's guest. If you are on Twitter, you already know him. If you're not on Twitter, you need to get on because today we have Jerry Durham, physical therapist. He's been a PT for 24 years. He's had a 3-location outpatient practice in San Francisco for 15 years. Jerry loves baseball, books, bikes, business, and of course, bourbon. He's been known to be partial to dogs, especially poodles. But Jerry's passion is sharing the belief that if healthcare puts its focus on the patient, then and only then will it begin to fix itself. Jerry Durham, welcome to Senior Rehab Podcast. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dustin. Thanks for having me on. I thought if we're going to do all those B's and then we have the P of patients, that I better add another P. So that's what I thought.
That's why you had the poodles. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of disappointed right now because you are known for your love of bourbon, and I'm here drinking some Four Roses mixed with some kombucha that my wife made, which is amazing. Jesus, and were you drinking coffee?
Yeah, I'm fully caffeinated.
It's pitiful, Jerry. Pitiful.
Well, hold up. I guarantee you, if we were to get someone in here and did a blood test, I would still be rating somewhere on the point something scale of bourbon in the bloodstream after PPS in Vegas this weekend. So I walk in, and I'm going to let me just tell this story. I walk into a casino bar, and I'm notorious for being picky, just like, hey, I love my bourbon. And, you start to drink some good old fashions. Like, there's no way the lobby bar makes a good old fashioned. Well, unfortunately, all wrapped up into one. I arrive on Wednesday, and by 1 p.m., I had already tasted a very well-made old fashioned in the lobby bar. And I was like, holy shit. And mind you, I was there till Sunday. So we'll leave it at that.
Gosh. Tell us about PPS. How was that?
PPS was interesting this year in a very great way. Ben Fong just did a recap on Uptalk Media, and I was reading that, and it made me think about my experience and definitely agree with a couple things that Ben said. PPS is more than just at practice owners. They seem to be going more towards the business side of business and teaching business principles. And it's not just we're helping practice owners. We're teaching business. And that came through this year. I'm going to tell you another big take home, which I love, Dustin, and it blew my mind, is I gave a talk last year with the guys from Strive Lab. And they had great content, and we combined my doing and using Strive Lab with their knowledge of what's going on in the world of patient engagement. And last year in Orlando, we titled the talk Patient Engagement, something. About 120 people showed up, and I was really happy and really impressed. I walk into the patient engagement talk this year in Vegas. There is no less than 400 people in the room of a talk titled Patient Engagement. And so I walked out of there going, well, I'm excited because now people are getting it. And I'm excited that people are getting it because the sooner we get it, the more we'll be able to grow our dinky little 7% of low back pain people finding the PT, and we'll get it out there. So I was really excited. I thought the questions were above par in the room because sometimes I worry about the level that we like to think about things. So the business aspect of it, the patient engagement side of it are really, really exciting for me. And people, yes, still complaining. We will always complain, as I will complain when I can't find a good old fashioned. But people starting to realize the answers aren't necessarily the same answers that were even from last year. So those were my 3 big takeaways and things that always make me excited about conference.
Yeah. So for for the listeners that are not, familiar with what you're known for, you've got an awesome podcast you do with Andrew Rothschild, the Healthcare Disruption podcast. You've written extensively on this topic. You teach a course with Jeff Moore. But when you say people are getting it, how would you define it? What are you all about?
The patient has to be the center. So it's just mind blowing to me, and don't think I just don't sit there and think about this for hours on end sometimes. How is it that a industry, healthcare, that only exists because of a person you sit across from? How is it that, how is it we went away from that person we sit across from? I don't say healthcare has always been as fucked up as it is today. At some point in time, we went away from it. And the day we lost focus on the person across from us is the day healthcare became what it is today. And I would argue the day health became what it is today, because we lost our true North Star, which is that person in the middle. Every other industry in the world gets it. Every other business gets it. Healthcare lost sight of it, and we went in a bad direction. So the it is putting that person back at the center. Call it person, patient, healthcare consumer, client, customer, putting them back at the center, and then everything that needs to occur will occur after we do that.
So you've done that in your business, in your clinics. Tell us what has been the fruit of making that shift to putting the patient first in your outpatient clinic business.
Well, so bottom line is it kept me in business. And how do I know that? Because when we started going out of network, my business partner and I looked at each other and went, okay, we're out of network, or will be as of January 1st. We both looked at each other and said, we have to start having a different conversation with the patient when they call the office, or else they will choose to go around the corner for less money. So that forced us in a long process, to not believe that this happened overnight, through a long process of questions and seeking out answers, of focusing on the value we had to give to people as physical therapists in our location in San Francisco, and then focusing on that first and foremost, and it has paid off. And what I found out, the trickle down in an awesome way, the trickle down was over into other business metrics. And by the way, we could call them PT metrics, because every PT cares about these numbers. My no-show cancel rate went down when we started engaging people earlier on the value. The arrival rate went up, and the average number of visits, but I like to look at completed plans of care now, went up also. So all these secondary things that we weren't looking into happening, it just kept flowing downhill. And I think that's why I'm such a, probably shouldn't say Nazi, because someone else in this country currently has taken the mantle on that. But why I become such a dictator over putting the patient first and selling the value is people want to come to me and say, how do I change these metrics? And they don't want to put in the work that's required. And the work that's required is you got to look at your customer or patient experience and understand how are you managing these people from the beginning.
So it seems like you've kind of packaged that up, and you and Jeff Moore are teaching courses on how people can implement some of the things that you found success in your business, how they can implement it themselves. But I wonder, in those interactions that you've had in sharing this stuff, whether it's on the internet or in person at conferences, what have been some of the biggest surprises when you interact with some of these business owners or clinic owners?
Well, surprises, you know what, whatever surprise I say is how I would have reacted 6, 7, 8 years ago. So again, I know I get on my high horse. Everybody needs to understand I started the same way, was making the same mistakes. And again, we weren't forced into it. We made a choice to do something, and then we said, okay, now we have to start doing other things differently. You know, the biggest surprise, so let's take it back to this. The biggest surprise is that people misinterpret the data they're currently collecting, and they don't step back and look at the big picture. And if you are an in-network clinic, which is fine with me, I don't dispute anybody's business model. And if you listen to Aaron LeBauer's podcast I did with him this weekend, it's the same thing. I don't dispute your business model. What I dispute is your takeaways and what you believe is occurring from that business model with the data you're collecting. And if you're not asking the right questions and you're not digging deep enough, then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to everybody else in the profession. So if you're not taking, you got to be taking surveys after initial evaluation at discharge, and you got to be asking people the right questions. And if you ask people, why did you choose us and why do you love us without then clarifying, did you choose us because we're in network? Then you're lying to everybody. And I've yet to find an in-network clinic that asks that question. Did you choose us because we are in network? Because most people are afraid of that answer. And I'm not accusing you of delivering bad care. I'm just saying you need to measure how and why people are choosing you. Measuring why people are happy with your care is different than finding out why they chose you in the first place. So that's my surprise, is that people aren't digging deep enough on their business metrics and figuring out what they're really telling them in the whole picture of the patient experience and customer experience.
Yeah. Well, I think, ever since, getting to know you, mainly through the internet and the little bit we've interacted in person at CSM, I just hear your message and I just think of how can that be applied to the settings that I'm familiar with, in home health, skilled nursing facilities, and mainly working with older adults. And if I recall, you did acute care coming out of school, right?
Yeah. I've done everything except for neuro, outpatient rehab, and I did a clinical rotation, but I've never been paid for it. So two things I've never been
So you've
paid.
done home health.
I've done home health, dude.
Oh my gosh.
And
Okay. So let's go to acute care.
I have to
go ahead.
clarify. The other thing I didn't do was peds, and that we can talk about that. Kids scare me, dude.
Me too. So let's go back to that acute care experience that you had.
Yeah.
Let's say you ran that hospital. Give me 3 changes that you would make to how that facility ran when you were there.
Oh Lord, dude. You want to talk about getting the coordination. Or
one change, as many as you want.
So let's talk about coordination of care / communication between teams. That was never really strong. The only people who communicated and the only coordination were the people who went the extra step to seek it out. Now, mind you, this was a few years ago, and I'm not claiming nobody does this, but at the time, the coordination of care. When you look at stuff like Kyle Ridgway and, God, I don't know who else, Alan, I don't know his last name, but I know there are people Jason.
Jason Falvey.
Yeah, on the ICU side, and you look how the things we're doing in ICU and the way people are engaged with physical therapy on the ICU and the positive changes it's making, we need to measure more of that throughout the stay. I'm of the belief that if we really dug deeper, and this is probably what I would change more, but this data wasn't available, I was looking at what resources are most affecting readmits and getting away from the problem with the hospital setting. You got to read Jonathan Bush, Where Does It Hurt? Read this about 3 years ago. The hospitals are the biggest part of the problem in healthcare. The contracts they sign, the consolidation of care, the way they monopolize certain things. And by the way, monopoly can be a good word. We can have that discussion some other day. But monopoly can be a good word. But the way they monopolize the contracts and things like that are not a good thing. So in a way, and I love this. I love this. So the communication, the coordination, the digging down to seeing who's having the greatest effect on getting people out and readmissions is a number one thing I do to answer your question.
Okay. Speaking of Jason Falvey, he wanted to ask you a question. He fielded this in the Facebook group. He said, "Do you think including patient satisfaction as part of hospital reimbursement has been beneficial for the patient experience?" And I know my wife, she's sitting behind me right now. Actually, she the Press Ganey score, which is like a patient satisfaction score they have to administer in the ED, is kind of the vein of her existence. So I'm interested to hear your response to this question.
You know what? I've seen the satisfaction surveys, and this is what's interesting is everybody wants to refer to the famous study where the highest satisfaction scores were the people that died the quickest. And that's no joke. That's no joke.
Really?
So here's then the question. So I'm reading a book for all the evidence-based medicine people out there that think I hate research. And I don't hate research. I just hate trying to sift through the research to find the good stuff. And I know there are people like Seth O'Neill and people teaching people how to read it. Or Seth O'Connell. Yeah. I think I combined two people.
The guy he just taught a course at Entropy.
Entropy, thank you. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah. And what I want is the research as a practicing clinician, as someone who's trying to help people every single day. I want research that I can apply. Now, what I'm finding is research is not necessarily done to apply. And I'm reading this great book called The Art of Scientific Investigation. And the beauty of it is twofold. It was written like in the 1930s, 1940s. And it takes you through, as a researcher, teaching researchers how to do research at a very basic level. For someone like me who doesn't want to be a researcher, it has really helped me to understand the process better. And the talking about the mistakes and setting up your question. And really my take home is research is to drive more questions. Right. And so to me, the questions can be then, how do I apply this to, my everyday practice? That's not necessarily the question they're looking to answer. I'm going to answer your question, by the way, about the press scanning stuff. But my thing is, let's take this information and let's look at all the data, and then let's figure out the right questions to ask. I have business data. I look at business data every day. If my calls are down, I don't just call everybody screaming. I go, my calls are down. I wonder why my calls are down. And then I dig, looking for the source of it. Guess what? Sometimes it's because my phone was fucked up. Sometimes it's because my top referral source went on vacation. Sometimes it's just because everybody's in a lull and it seemed like everybody left town at the same time. So my calls can be down for multiple reasons. So customer satisfaction scores in the hospital setting, I really question, what are they measuring? Oh, customer satisfaction. It's like, no, not when there's 27 categories, right? What is it measuring? And, how, if we broke out each category separately, what does it measure? What my gut reaction is on that response where everybody says, well, people who die faster have higher customer satisfaction scores. My things are, if you dug deeper, it's probably because everybody left them the fuck alone. And so you would see that they stopped getting checkups. They were stopped being woken up every 2 hours. I'm like, let's dig a little deeper. So is customer satisfaction measuring what it needs to measure in the hospital setting? I don't know. So my opinion is we need to measure something. It's not a hotel. Okay. A hospital. And I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing a lot more conversation around this, is going forward of actually paying hospitals for empty beds, right? And that going forward, the mindset has to be we pay hospitals to have empty beds, right? As UC San Francisco is building fucking huge monstrosities, and you tell me how they're going to do with that. That's why I'm a big believer in Jonathan Bush's book, Where Does It Hurt? And you really start to break down the money side is not some goddamn PT provider with 3 clinics looking for 3 more visits, right? Yeah. That's not the cost side. So the satisfaction isn't measuring what we think it's measuring. I don't believe it is. And yes, I believe that patient experience, it's in the triple aim. So I would call it customer satisfaction. I would just call it, let's measure the patient experience. Did they have a good experience? Correlating with increased outcomes, correlating with decreased cost of a course of care. So let's measure the triple aim. Let's not measure any one thing individually.
I like that. Let's go to your home health experience, because this is very applicable to me.
It's not big, but I'm happy to share.
Yeah. So, from my perception, there can be a lot of good and there can be a lot of harm done just by interactions on the telephone. And in home health, I mean, so much of the communication is done, with the patient, with other caregivers, or not caregivers, but healthcare professionals, is done through the phone. If you were running your own home health care company, could you give me some of the principles that you would teach or instill in your staff to ensure that any touch point that we have with our patients or healthcare providers is a good one or beneficial one.
So the staff dealing on the phone with the customers, just to clarify, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Customers and then healthcare providers in general.
Check this out. You guys ready? Everybody have out their pen and pad, because the first one is the biggest one and will make the biggest effect. You ready? Answer.
I'm ready. I got my pen.
Phone. Answer the phone.
No way.
Have a person pick the phone up. Do you know how many times a week my staff gets some kind of surprised answer because someone picked the phone up? So you want to talk about building expectations and building trust and building a relationship? Because ultimately, as Jeff Moore said during the last podcast, right, the goal is to build trust. That has to be the ultimate goal of any provider-patient relationship, to build trust. And by the way, you want to talk about customer satisfaction and hospital scores and malpractice suits? Everybody shows there's a correlation with the level of trust with your provider and the number of malpractice claims against that provider. So the better a provider builds trust, the more the malpractice claims go down. So science proves that. So answer the phone and start to build that relationship. And we have 8 or 9 data points we have to collect on every phone call, okay? And this is no different than anybody else, right? So we used to collect 8 or 9 data points and we would hang up. Now, my team will take you through a conversation about you, Dustin, and find out about you. And when you say, I'm calling for low back pain, because I have low back pain, they will say, well, Dustin, tell me what you have done. And during that, what have you done? You're going to give them most of the information we need. And they're writing it down. And by the end of the phone call, we didn't just collect 9 data points. We got your story from you. We found out what was important to you. We found out what you want to get back to. And we've already started to build that trust in that relationship. And you're just talking to, and I'm doing the quote saying with my fingers, just an office coordinator. And so I instill upon my office staff who answer the phone how they are the most important cog in the whole wheel of my business. It's not the physical therapist. Without them, the patients will not arrive. And boy, you ought to see my staff, and they're just baffled. And I have to repeat it to them about 20 times before they finally start to take it in. And
yeah,
so,
I can only imagine how empowering that is for them.
Right. And then so you can empower the front office, the people answering the phone, to have them understand how important their job is. I will walk into a doctor's office after we hang up, and I can tell you how empowered and how important the staff believes they are, by the way, by how long it takes them to look up and say hello to you. So that would be my thing. It's got to be about the other person on the other end of the phone. What have you done? How long has it been? How bad is it? What do you want to get back to? And then all that information they're gathering. Again, by the end of it, maybe they have to ask you 1 or 2 other questions. All your info's in the system. And we achieved our goal. Our goal and your goal are not the same. That's what else we forget. We always state what our goals are. And I did this for the first while. I was always moving towards my goals and finagling the conversation to reach my goals. Now the conversation is to help you better make a connection and reach your goals with us. And in the meantime, I collect everything I need.
You sound like David Reed over there.
Oh God, dude. That's
Mr.
awesome.
Voice of the Patient.
Yeah.
All that you just said, when I think of like my current job as a home health PT, there are some very, very easy things that I can do, and then just all the other field clinicians that we can do to dramatically improve. I mean, like you said, potentially outcomes, but then definitely the experience. And it is mind blowing how frequent that I'll have patients that, say the therapist or the nurse just shows up at the door, doesn't even call, doesn't tell them when they're coming, or they tell them when they're coming, and then they just show up 6 hours later. Like this stuff, happens on a frequent basis, or just not establishing expectations or just respecting other people's time. And just some of the simple, almost common sense things that we can do, especially in the home health realm. I mean, my gosh, if you talk about building trust, I mean, it will build it instantly. But you could also lose it instantly. It's a very delicate thing, I feel like. But I feel like home health PT, I mean, it's we have a simple fix, just do the things that you mentioned. And I mean, it's going to have a dramatic impact on our job. I feel like.
You know what else happens on that first phone call, Dustin? And by the way, this is cool. I've seen studies on acute care. So this isn't just outpatient, it's expectations. This blew me away. I was looking for some research on expectations for Jeff and I's class. And I found research on expectations in the acute care setting with physical therapy, and they were just as fascinating. So there is carryover that, man, this mind over matter thing, the psychology of things. Zach Stearns just posted a great blog post last night that I found on Twitter and took a read through. It was saying like PT has a psychology problem. Again, I don't think we're asking the right questions. I don't think we're looking completely at sorry, let me go back. Research answers the question that is asked of it. Don't get me wrong. And so I read these research and I'm like, and actually it does what it's supposed to. It makes me ask the next question. And I talked about, just as a side note, I talked about Fritz and Childs and Flynn and Wayner this weekend in my talk at PPS and said, these guys got the questions answered that we needed answered to move forward in our profession. And they did it 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. They did all the hard work to lay the foundation. And they asked one question at a time. Where are low back pain patients going? And then they answered it. Then wisely, if you look at their research, they then said, where should low back pain patients go? And now they're digging deeper and deeper. So it's beautiful to look at how that progressed because they kept asking questions. And so in the expectations research, I would say also, Dustin, especially in your setting, you can start to set expectations just by making a phone call and say, I'm running late. Will that work for you? No, it won't. Okay, I apologize, Mrs. Smith. When can we reschedule? You think that might start to build some trust and say, you're important in my relationship. What? You show up 6 hours late? Nothing says I care about you more than I couldn't respect your time. And man, we so underestimate the value of that.
Yeah.
Damn, dude, I send my cleaners away. I won't go to my cleaners or my barber for seeing me 5 minutes late. A healthcare provider?
Right. Right. And I know like the cynical person in me says, well, they're homebound. They don't have anything to do. Why should I worry about that?
Of course.
But if I put myself in the patient's shoes, I mean that they may be homebound. They may not be doing a lot, but that doesn't mean that, we should disrespect their time. By the way, which happens a lot. And I understand it's very difficult out in the field, but my gosh, easy, simple communication goes so far.
You fuck with someone's The Price is Right time of their homebound day. You don't think you're going to destroy that relationship, dude? Or their ass Phil, or their and you and I both know, man. I've seen people sent away or called people, can I call you back? My show's on. And I'm like,
I know the Price is Right has fallen out of favor with a lot of my patients since Mr. Barker left, and now there's Drew Carey. I mean, Drew's great, but he ain't no Bob Barker.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. He ain't no Bob Barker because I grew up with Bob Barker.
So, so putting people first. I mean, that's your big message. There's a lot to benefit from that. How, from your perspective, what are your plans or intentions or tactics to influence our profession to start to think like that? And I know you've been very innovative in that already with just your voice on social media, doing the podcast, teaching courses, and even having a patient panel at CSM last year. What do we need to do to make this a profession-wide shift to where we focus more on the people?
The patient panels have to occur more and more frequently and more spread out and more diverse, plain and simple. Then the association, well, here. And believe you me, I understand the value of what the association brings and what they don't bring. Too many people expect too much out of the association, and they don't understand. And so they say, well, it doesn't bring me any value. And then when they lay out all the things it should be doing, I'm like, maybe you should find out a little more what the association does and what you should do. People forget what it means to be a professional. So in no way am I digging at the association. What I'm saying, though, here is that I know what their role is and what their role isn't. And when it comes to conferences and things like that, it is their responsibility to make sure there are patient panels. And to default to like combined section meetings, say, well, there are 11 different sections and they all have their own rules. No, fuck that. They all fall under the APTA. So the APTA, don't tell me you can't have a conversation. Don't tell me you can't make it where there are patient panels at every single CSM conference. So there is a responsibility of the association to make sure that there are patient panels to get to the broadest audience. And we know that CSM. And we know that CSM is full of students, which I love. So therefore, the biggest leverage point and the biggest advantage is to put the patient panels at CSM. And so, again, our association has the responsibility to make sure that happens. Now, let's move on to our responsibility, Dustin Jones and Jerry Durham, is to do what we're doing, to get podcasts, to get people like Lisa. I just spoke to a student group down in Arizona 3 weeks ago, and Lisa showed up with me. And Lisa, it was great. The students started asking, well, what about your patient? What about Lisa? She's local. I said, sure. And told Lisa, and they reached out, and they had set it all up. I didn't need to get involved. They wanted her there. And the value, I'm just going to tell you right now, Dustin, the value of her speaking there, then with my content, was exponentially. It was a Richter scale of increased value. Me standing in front of people, telling everybody how important the patient is, versus Lisa standing there and telling about her perspective of physical therapy, her experience with physical therapy, what a great physical therapist her current PT is, and why, and then having me go, here's your process. Man, I guarantee you, nobody left that room without going, okay, I get it. Now it's my choice. Whereas if it's just me going, here's your process, and people going, well, yeah, I know that, but it's really important the skills I bring, And she doesn't downplay her skills at all, but she talks a lot about the relationship and listening and how important all that was. So it's huge. So there's our responsibility. So it's the association to make sure patients are represented at conferences, and then it's our responsibility. So let's say that's one day. So I'll give you this. The association's responsibility is one day out of the year. Ours is 364 other days. So it falls on us. It falls on us, man. It falls on us. So that's what I think everybody, well, we need these patient conferences, we need these patient panels. I'm like, well, what are we going to do the rest of the year? Everybody sit around and wait for a conference to roll back through.
Yeah, Lisa's awesome. She's been a guest on this podcast. I've read at least one blog post that she's written. So the listeners are pretty familiar with her, but I'm curious, you've been to CSM. She was on that patient panel. You did the Arizona presentation discussion recently. What's the biggest thing you've learned from Lisa in those interactions that you weren't aware of or didn't know prior to those two different talks?
So Lisa spoke, and I'm going to pull Aaron into this. Aaron spoke because I think there's the diversity of it and then the theme across the diverse population.
Okay. Aaron Jackson at Healthy Lawyer, I believe.
You got it. And who spoke at CSM with Lisa. And this was the beauty of this. And Eric Robertson nailed it in his blog post to me. And this is no joke. I contacted those two guys a year before and said, would you guys be willing, and I wrote it this way, would you guys be willing to put yourself out there publicly and share your story? Step one is we totally undervalue the story and the person attached to the story. And just thinking anybody who's a patient wants to stand up in front of 100 or 1,000 people is our egos taken over. So step one is understanding that this is a person and treat them as a person. And I told them, will you be willing to do this? Yes. And they said, what's the format? I said, the format is you guys have 2 hours to speak. And they go, okay, what else? I said, well, if I do the math, you each have 1 hour. And if you want to leave space for questions, you each have 55 minutes. And so I let them tell their story. And then, well, do you want to see it beforehand? I'm like, nope. Why do I want it? What am I going to do with your story? Right? So this respect, and by the way, that's one of the core values of my business that I started 15 years ago.
give respect, get respect. And so I needed to be completely respectful. And we could call it empathy. We could call it what you want. I don't know if you can be empathetic before you know someone. I don't know the true definition of empathy. But being empathetic and respectful of these people. I had no idea what their stories entailed. So when I asked them, thinking they would be excited to get up in front of people, would have been mistake number one. The theme that came out across both of them was these were people with very, very tough roads. These weren't people with knee pain who couldn't run, one day.
Right.
These were deep stories. And by the way, not to take away with the person who has knee pain who can't run, because we don't know their story. And we don't know the complexity of their story. And maybe they just lost 200 pounds and the only thing keeping them sane is their ability to run every day. So what I learned was how entwined these stories are, and that context of my patient discussion that is pinned at the top of my Twitter feed. If you go onto my Twitter feed, is what I learned in person. And if you look at what I pinned, the thing I love about it most is the outer circle that your eye is not even drawn to. And that is that whole environmental context of what they bring. I was talking with an outpatient PT at PPS. I said, so you get a female in with back pain, and all you do is ask her about that immediate stuff. And, I want to go back to the gym. And yet you don't know that she has to get up at 5:30 to get a 5-year-old ready for school every day. And that she busts her ass to get, because you don't ask and you don't learn these. And that really what's most difficult, and I won't say it's most difficult, but this is part of her life. And if we don't get that context down in our patients, then we will never truly get these patients better. And I would go that far to say that, that she gets up at 5:30 and gets a first grader ready, and her husband actually has already gone for work, right, at 5 a.m., right? And they're busting their ass to make ends meet. And she's in there saying, I just want to get rid of this back pain that I have when I sit at work all day.
That's so true.
And so what I learned, the take home from Aaron and Lisa, was the depth of their story.
Yeah. And it reminds me of my outpatient days when, we kind of crunched for time. I would make sure to ask as little open-ended questions as possible.
Isn't that funny?
Trying to get
the
yes/no questions. If I could tell they were starting to go on a tangent or tell me, their life past, I would literally interrupt them right in the middle of their sentence. And looking back on it now, I limited myself right from the get-go. Within the first 5 minutes of my interactions with my patients, I already shot myself in the foot. And it sounds so simple, but it is hard to get to know people, to hear their story, to kind of tease out all these factors that are contribute to their situation. But my gosh, is it worth it? I mean, it's very valuable. And like you said, you have the data to show it now that it is worth it, which is really exciting.
It's literally valuable. So that's the other thing. So when you're mapping out this customer or patient experience, you got to understand there are business objectives, and then there are the customer or patient objectives. First time I mapped out our customer experience, I realized in hindsight, I mapped out all the business objectives, which was very interesting to go back. Yeah, dude. You get those two to line up and it will be far more valuable than you can ever imagine. And, just for context and clarification, I'm not talking that we need to be psychologists here by any stretch. And that's what Zach's blog is so great at doing. And he doesn't claim that either. And actually, I don't want to tell you to cut to the end, but his last 2 paragraphs are really, really good because he asked some good questions that I believe need to be.
You have to give me the link to that.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I've done it, and I'm speaking of me, and now I've heard other people doing it, is, oh, goddamn, that patient was crying in the room today. And it's like, man, if you can't embrace that for what it is and use that to get the patient to the right place. So when they start to cry, you can't go, fuck, another crier. You have to go, is this patient right for me, or do I need to get them somewhere else? Is this bigger than me, or can I handle this? But no, it's like, fuck, she cried. I couldn't get through. And I'm sorry, she cried mostly. I couldn't get through my eval and blah, blah, blah. I was like, You still had the same amount of time. You still got the information you got. And I would argue you have better information than if you would have cut her off and she didn't cry.
That's
of where she needs to be. And this was the whole, and I didn't do this on purpose. It's just where we ended up. This is my whole point of my presentation with Richard Zhao this last week about low back pain, the point of entry being physical therapists. The goal of this is not to get every low back pain patient into physical therapy. You have to understand that. And there's so many people afraid of that. And I saw a Twitter conversation on Sunday in another country, oh, we can't lose touch. We can't do this. It's like, no, our job is to get people to the right place. Do you understand that? It's not to treat every low back pain patient. Every low back pain patient is not a physical therapy patient. No one has ever proven that. Okay. So we have to take some measures and we have to have some conversations on the first phone call to get people to the right place. And no, we're being forced into this psychology role, of which I believe we should be, because people aren't getting the proper care.
Right.
And if we have the proper team in place, if we had the proper team in place, then dude, you want to talk about more research? I would talk that probably most of those people who come in crying in your office don't need PT. They need a really good psychologist. And I bet you that back pain is going to get better without PT.
Yeah. And the research just keeps coming out to confirm what you're saying right there.
Yeah. And so we argue about if we're psychologists or movement experts or whatever. And I say we're none of those. What we are is we're listening experts, and throw that into the mix. No, we're not movement experts. We're listening experts. And we take what we hear and we do what's best for the patient. We build a plan of care around what's best for the patient. If loading and exercise is the best thing for the patient, we do that. We achieve the goals. We get them out. If going to the psychologist is the best thing for the patient, then after my eval, I refer out, by the way, to someone who's not going to make them wait a fucking month. And then thirdly, if I need to manage this patient a little closely based on their expectations, and get this, if I need to do some manual therapy for 1 or 2 visits to get their buy-in, to achieve their ultimate goals, to then deliver the evidence-based medicine that I know they need and will get them better, and they still get out in 6 to 8 visits, then do the manual therapy, because I did a great job on the evaluation. I understood what they need. I had a conversation with them. I got buy-in on these next 2 steps in order to reach the ultimate goal of getting them better. Why is that so difficult? Why do we have to argue every day on that?
Yeah. Yeah. And for those that they're not on the Twitter sphere, these arguments do happen, probably more often than they should. But it is interesting to hear the professional bickering that can go back and forth, which I do love a good debate. And I love that we can have those dialogues with each other. But some of these even pour out into the public, public sector.
They don't make sense if you step it back again, Dustin, go, what's best for the patient? Oh, it's to give them facts and logic. It's like everybody makes decisions based on emotion. That's been like the only consistent psychology research forever. Well, I don't. Okay. All right. Yeah. Again, so explain to me why there are 500 cereal brands with 300 different covers and stuff, and you're telling me people are making emotional decisions picking their Fruity Pebbles, dude, and you think all of a sudden they're in pain and they have life-changing, their life has been altered, and you think all of a sudden they magically become non-emotional sitting across from you? Yeah. Good luck on that. Good luck treating. Yeah, good luck on that.
Oh boy, I love it. All right, well, let's transition. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm just going to ask you a couple quick questions. Your answers don't have to be quick by any means, but I know you love to read. You are, I know you've read a lot in and out of the PT world, which I really appreciate about you, is that you kind of branch out in these other sectors that influence us tremendously, but a lot of people just don't give them the attention they probably deserve. So out of all these books that you've read, and we'll center around kind of the customer experience, just the theme that we've been talking about. What has been one of the most actionable books that you've read that you think the average Joe clinician could read and gain tremendously from?
So fortunately, I had this person on my podcast, and I'm not lying about this. I'll tell you why I'm going to just give you this book. Because if you're a business owner, you can use it for creating the customer experience like I talked about. So you can take all these principles and not even introducing it to the PT patient side, you can create a better experience. With that said, you could then hand sections over to your physical therapist so they can create a better relationship and experience one-on-one. So this is the one true book that works on the business side and the clinical side, that delivering the care. And this is Matt Watkinson, okay? Excuse me. Gosh, where the heck? Thank you. Watkinson. First name Matt, 2 T's. The 10 principles behind great customer experiences. I love it because I found this book. It was handed to me as a gift. And it was handed to me as a gift. And you can ask Andrew Rothschild. I didn't get 2 pages in, and I was just like screaming over the phone and over texting, and then spent the next 2 months trying to get Matt on the podcast. And we did a 2-part podcast on the healthcare disruption. It's actually episode 2 and 3.
All right, I'll link to those in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. With Matt. And this book, again, and what's great is he wrote it. It can be read in any order. That's the beauty of it. It is a simple read, and most of it, you, who's ever listening, will be able to relate to it. There's no high-level stuff. A lot of talk about psychology research, sociology research, which I love. And how to apply it towards a customer. I have more notes from this book. I've got a hidden, I've got like 3 or 4 moleskins, but I have one that looks different than every other moleskin. And it is just this, it is full of notes from that book. And that book is only my patient experience book, and it's filled up, that moleskin is filled up with awesome notes from this book. The other one, let me look these titles up. I got one more for you. I got one more, but I want to make sure I'm getting these right.
And I know you did a good blog post for David Reed.
Yeah, go to that one. Yeah, for sure. Here's the other one. I'll give you 2. And this is a good, easy read. And again, it's 39 chapters, and it's the customer roles, the 39 essential rules for delivering sensational service. It is written by he was the EVP, Executive Vice President of Walt Disney World. And his name is Lee Cockerell. And I've read that book, and it's just a good book to get you in the right mindset of what it means and what it means to map out. Part of it has to do with just like setting up a map of the properties. Other of it is how to think like the customer, and it'll get you in that right mindset. Lee Cockerell was on Therapy Insiders podcast.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, and I made a guest appearance. I asked like 2 questions, but actually I just wanted to sit on it while he interviewed. I sat on mute most of the time. But no, it was really cool. I told Gene he had to put me on as a co-presenter, but I just wanted to be on it to listen. Those are the awesome 2 books I would talk about from the customer experience side, patient experience side. And again, the 10 Principles book is just a magical book. I will probably, so easy. I've already reread it, and I've read some chapters 6 times. That's the beauty. It doesn't have to be read in order.
Beautiful. There you go, folks. Links will be in the show notes. Now, my favorite question, the last question. If we were at CSM, and let's say you packed the biggest room at the convention center with geriatric rehab clinicians, and you had their attention for about 30 to 60 seconds, what would you want them to know?
You know what? Are they home health people, or are they just outpatient?
Just
all the above?
Probably all the different settings, but they mainly work with older adults, which is basically the people that listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I would say, let's go back to that same thing, home health, acute care. I would say have everybody in your company respectful of everybody's time, and they always have to be thinking about that person on the other side of the phone. So it can never be about me. What does that person need? What can I do for you? What have you done? What do you need from me? By the way, how many geriatric PTs or home health, even intake people go, what do you need from me? Like fucking first. Why? This is my favorite thing. Save it to last. You just wasted 60 minutes of their fucking time. And now you're going to ask them what they want from you when nothing you asked them they wanted from you? Why don't you ask that first? What do you need from me? You know what? I don't really need your help. Okay, well, and then you can have a conversation so you can find out if, again, you're the right fit for this person. Think about how many people you walk in and they just don't want to see you, man. And I'm serious, right, Dustin? So it's like there's a time to sit down and go, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? I know you're not happy. I want to make you happy. Well, you could not show up. Okay, well, that is a possibility, but I don't want to leave you here in this condition. So can I help train a family member? How about that? So let's get to the real solution and solve real problems. Filling out that Oasis sheet. Do you guys still use that?
Oh, yeah, buddy.
Thank you. Filling out that Oasis sheet. Yeah. By the way, go in and ask your next 50 home health patients in a row if their goal is to have you fill out that Oasis sheet.
I know they love it when I'm staring at my computer for 30 minutes. Get back to me
with the results. Get back to me with the results of that research study, Jesse. So just ask people, what can I do for you? And by the way, what can I do for you today? You know what? I'm exhausted. My meds kept me up all night, my doctor, and you know what? Fuck it, I'm leaving you alone today. Can you promise me you'll go through these 3 things? Because we're still working towards those goals that you set, that you told me were important to you, right? We're still working towards those, yeah. So can you just commit to me to do these 3 things today? I'll do those for you, Dustin. All right, I'm out of here.
That's awesome.
Man, the world would be a better place.
I agree with you, Jerry Durham. I thank you for just coming on the show. But I haven't said this to you before, but I've taken a decent amount of continuing education, and just in our interactions online, in person, I've probably gained more clinically from the interactions with you than any of the other continuing education courses that I've done. I've seen so much improvement in my patient interactions, even in outcomes, just the whole experience of therapy for the patient, but then for me as a therapist has just been awesome since, just hearing what you've been preaching. So thank you. For doing what you do, man. It's really encouraging. I know a lot of other people would probably echo the same thing. So keep at it.
You just made my day. So, and sharing stuff like that is the flip side of all this other stuff I just said, right? So, sharing this stuff with other people, going in, talking to your patients, saying how, I just think we take these relationships and we don't apply what works in our personal world to develop a professional relationship. And you saying that to me, you don't think that's going to make me, if you don't think that's going to make me a better person in some way, shape, or form, then we've all got a long way to go. And now I'll be better because of that. I don't know how right this second, but I truly will. And next time I go to send a tweet out or post something, I'll think, man, this gets to a lot of people. This is, this could be a big deal. So,
it does.
So
especially cool. when you've got quite the following as you do. So if people wanted to pick your brain, where could they find you? What's your Twitter handle and your website?
So I'm going to send you to my website first. My website is brand new. So you guys listening will be some of the few first people to go there. I tell everybody where to find me on my contact page, and you'll find, I say that truly there's only 2 ways to find me. So go through my website. That's the third one, but it's Jerry, Jerry, Durham, DurhamPT.com. So Jerry Durham PT, all one word, .com. Sign up for my email list. I'd love to keep in contact with you. If you go to my contact page and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's only 2 ways to get a hold of me. Twitter, which is Jerry_Durham PT, right? So pretty close. And then it says at the bottom of the page, I leave my cell phone number, 415-509-3986. If you want to chat, text me. And I guarantee you, I'll get back to you so fast by text. And I say, do not call me, because the best way to never hear from me is call me and leave a voicemail. I got voicemails that are a year old on my phone that are still unopened. I don't know why. I think I leave them there to remind me, just to keep telling people,
So if a patient calls you, you'll answer. But if I would call you, you wouldn't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you are correct.
Or if you do text him, you may get lucky and get a wonderful picture of his two purse dogs, his poodles.
You got my poodles. My poodles are resting comfortably. They've had a rough day today. We started to go out early. They got treats early.
Oh boy!
I was looking at it. She just heard the T word. So, yeah. So
yeah, you got to get off then.
Yeah, that's our cue to go.
All right, Jerry, I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you.